Council calls police and fire code, police and fire meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Tonight we're going to discuss National Standard Property Code. Becky desired to join the union, which would be bringing her to the police department. Has some firefighter issues, discussed with them, and then some police department things. Chief Fitch, you want to go first, and maybe we can get you out of here a little earlier?
Yeah, because you want to get out here before Becky starts.
Well, I mean, the one thing that I talked with the city manager, I talked to Scott about is one of the issues I would like to get before the first of the year, some new badges. According to the collective bargaining agreement, each officer is supposed to have 2 badges. There's some money there. I was going to get new badges, and then we was going to send the old ones back to be refurbished, and that would give everybody their 2 according to that way we'd be in compliance with the contract. As far as that goes, I put in a purchase order for some lockers to help do the locker room, but through the CARE Act, some COVID grant. Everything else is, one thing that I know we've mentioned in the past is maybe, and we've worked on the budget, adding a 10th full-time officer to the police department. I think that the budget can well withstand that, and it would drastically reduce, if not eliminate, scheduled overtime. As we all know, that sometimes in the police department, you can't count for calls at the end of a shift or training or things like that, but as far as anything to be scheduled, that would all but eliminate it. So to make things, I think, a lot nicer in that regard, and to keep guys from having to work, because right now where we got a couple guys off on medical leaves, it's really putting, and one in training, it's putting a damper on things and costing us some overtime. But there's just really no way around.
Yeah, I understand, so we'll always be maybe a little bit overtime when you got shifts for cases.
Right.
Can't go, hey, I'll be right back, I gotta go clock out.
Sometimes with court, guys get subpoenaed the last minute or the day before, there's things like that that's always gonna be a few hours here and there, but as far as on the schedule with overtime and things, I think it would pretty much all but eliminate that.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that 10th officer, the January next year's budget. Like you said, it's something that you can always fit in and just deleting 70% of your overtime. That's more than that.
Absolutely. And, my hopes is, we've been working on scheduling, with the fire department and Becky with code and everybody to try to get when the civil service test comes. So hopefully we could potentially hire a 10th if you guys approve it, and move forward with that off of the civil service test. Will probably be in December, first part of December. So that would fit nicely in moving forward into the first of the year.
Right on. Yeah, so, I'm okay with that, sending it to the finance committee for their, budget.
I have no problem with that at all. If it's gonna cut down on overtime and make us a more efficient, police department, I have no problem with that.
Then also I wanted to mention that, we're gonna be getting the neighborhood watch back up and running here pretty soon. So Chief, if any information you could help us with that and guide us through the do's and the don'ts.
Yeah, I'd love to be a part of that, which I think I've talked with you and Johnny and some of the others.
So I think John, Curtin, and myself, get that thing rolling here shortly. I just got to put some paperwork together for that.
Sounds good.
Anything else you needed?
No, that's really about all I can think of right now. Everything's going pretty good, and we're, being extremely productive here lately. Things are going well.
The mayor's course been busy.
Yeah. So, I think everything's going good. We're still ironing out some things and still growing, but the young officers are really showing a lot of potential and really meshing well with the other guys. So
Good.
It's going well. I'm pleased with the progress. Just to update you on Chris's training, he's over halfway done now, with K9. The maximum time, that was 10 weeks. This is week 6. But there's a possibility. I talked with the guy that's in charge of the handler or the trainer, and he may be able to get out a week or so early. Things are going pretty well.
Good. That's great.
Yeah. So once he gets all his certifications, he's hitting the ground running.
Deal.
So Chief, so how much is the badges, how much are they gonna be?
it was $1,200 and I think $23 for 10, well, actually, that's for 12 badges. Essentially, that's for 10 silver patrolman police officer badges and 2 sergeant's badges, because that's what we kind of have already, not including the ones we have for auxiliary. And if we got those in, that would leave us 1 for the growth, for an additional officer moving forward. And it would also have the 2 sergeant's badges, which we already have. And so when we sent them back to be refurbished, they said it's about $20 a badge to be refurbished. So obviously that'd be much cheaper. That'd be 240-ish to get the badges refurbished. Now the chief's badges, they were both brand new when I inherited them, so they don't need any work whatsoever. But to get the ones refurbished, it'd be about 240, and it's like 1,223 total, and that comes with a lifetime guarantee that they will refurbish with the it's called Road Glow that you put on it, free of charge for the rest of the life of the badge.
And you already had that in your budget, so we don't need to appropriate anything for it.
Correct.
And then the new lockers, you said, were you able to already purchase them from the?
Well, we
CARES Act
haven't.
Money or your?
I've been working with the city manager. That's one of the things we're getting a list, with the COVID money and the grant money that's out there. So I'm just waiting on him to tell me to move forward on that. And we'll go ahead and do that. We're getting some bids right now for the installation of them, things like that, to get the total package and stuff. So.
So just to clarify, for CARES money, so for PD, I've already pushed POs for the rest of the compliant furniture, the installation of it, and then also the purchase of the lockers. But we're still trying to we're still working on bids to get them assembled and installed. And then on the fire side of the house, I submitted the PO for the gurney they have in the list for it, and then also 2 stair chairs and blood pressure cuffs. So jumping ahead a little bit, but that's all stuff that we're able to utilize CARES money for moving forward.
Right.
Which is about 85,000 roughly for all that I just mentioned.
Okay. Didn't have to do anything but knock the dust off the chief badge, I'm sure.
Stop it.
I went there.
You went there. All right.
Okay, so good enough for the police. You want to let Ms. Barber go next? Thank you, Chief Barber. Okay, you're up.
I only have a couple things to talk about. First thing I just want to let everyone know is we have secured 8 houses in the community, meaning the last pallet load of OSB board is running pretty low. I've got about 11 sheets left. And I just wanted to put it out there. If you guys want me to continue to secure houses, I'm gonna have to have some more OSB. We probably have enough to do 1 more house, and we've got about 5 of them before the end of the year that I'd like to get taken care of.
Was the prosecutor in Athens gonna get you some money for board up and whatnot?
I haven't talked to Keller yet. I didn't know if that should be my job to do that, or council, or maybe the city manager.
Well, I guess if he pledged to you, I would just follow up with him.
I don't know if that money is available. I don't know anything about it, but what I'm thinking is it's almost November, second week of October. I'd like to get a few more houses secured by the end of the year. It's a good time to do it because the street department helps secure those houses.
Right.
They're actually the ones doing the work, and in the winter, they have less work than what they do in the summer. So, I just wanted to put it out there. I think I'm not sure how much OSB is right now because we're in the midst of hurricane season, but we bought it super cheap the last time.
So the same sheet of wood that we paid roughly $9 a sheet for, the last time we got her order is now $24 a board. That's COVID, hurricane, capitalism.
I think a
whatever.
lot of it's COVID.
Okay.
Gouge the price what they can.
Yes.
I would recommend Scott contact the prosecutor and see if there's any
Yeah,
money's available.
yeah, I would contact him.
And if he's watching, I'm gonna ask him for money for the canine too. He knows what that's all about though.
And then the property maintenance code?
Yes, the next thing I just wanted to present, I passed around the paper on the format of the 2015 IPMC. It's got a breakdown, and this is what you can take home with you or share it with fellow citizens or anyone that's concerned. I have a PowerPoint here. I just like to go through the IPMC for 2018. IPMC means International Property Maintenance Code, just to make everyone aware, that's what those initials are.
Sorry, I have no idea why I started doing that.
We ask ourselves as citizens and as employees here in the city of Nelsonville, why do we want to adopt the IPMC? Well, the International Property Maintenance Code is a model code that regulates the minimal maintenance requirements for existing buildings. The IPMC is a maintenance document intended to establish minimal maintenance standards for basic equipment, light, ventilation, heating, sanitation, and fire safety. Responsibly is fixed amongst owners, operators, and occupants for code compliance. IPMC provides for the regulations and safe use of existing structures in the interest of social and economic welfare of the community. So we'll go to the first slide, the purpose. I'm gonna have a hard time reading this. The IPMC establishes the minimal standards for the use and maintenance of buildings. The provision of the code shall apply to all existing residential and non-residential structures. It constitutes minimal requirements and standards for premises, structures, equipment, facilities for light, ventilation, space, heating, sanitation, protection from the elements, and reasonable level of safety from fire and other hazards, and for a reasonable level of sanitary maintenance. It guides the responsibility of owners, an owner authorized agent, operators, and occupants, the occupancy of existing structures and premises, and for the administration, enforcement, and penalties. The due process of law. So establishing the necessary legal basis for enforcement of the code by the authority having jurisdiction. All the policing powers inherited in enforcing minimal standards for the use and maintenance of buildings must follow the line of authority from the U.S. Constitution to the state to the actual enforcer. It protects all parties from an unfair enforcement action, and it sets forth the due process that requires corrective actions to be accomplished in a constitutional manner. It protects the welfare, the safety, and the health of citizens as well. So it establishes minimal maintenance standards for such elements as basic equipment, light, ventilation, heating, sanitation, and fire safety. Fixing the responsibility among owners, operators, occupants for the following codes. Regulating the use of existing structures and premises, provides administrative enforcement and penalties. These four categories provide communities with the tools to reduce risks created by deteriorated or unsafe buildings and help community upgrade and maintain other existing structures. And then I just want to talk about our current code that we have. So we have a lot of this IPMC in our current code. It's just watered down. This is more structured. It's easier to read. This talks about these things. In chapter 1, the scope is notice of violations and prosecution of violations. Vacant buildings, like unsafe structures. So it tells us what to do with unsafe buildings and unsafe structures. It teaches us or tells us, guides us, closing off vacant structures. It also guides us with the right of entry, how we do a stop work order. It proper identifies the code official. It teaches us the means of appeal, how to do demolition, placards, and inspections. So we've got all of this in our current code. It's just scattered everywhere throughout our current code, and it's not as in-depth detail. Chapter two just has the meanings given to the chapter, the definitions. So we have definitions in the beginning of our, like chapter 9 talks about, in chapter 9, you can read about vacant properties. So all the definitions are under vacant properties. And then you've got your code after your definitions. And it's scattered. It's scattered throughout any kind of police code or any kind of fire code, where this is just code enforcement code or property maintenance code. We'll go to chapter 3. What it talks about, chapter 3 provides requirements that are intended to maintain a minimal level of safety and sanitation for both the general public and the occupants of a structure, and to maintain a building structural and weather-resistant performance. So exterior property areas, it defines what the exterior needs to look like, what needs to be built on the exterior of the buildings. Talks about weeds and high grass, rodents, exhaust vents, motor vehicles, graffiti. That's one thing we don't have in our current code is a graffiti code. Swimming pools for hot tubs and spas. We don't have that in our current code. The only thing we have regulated is commercial swimming pools. So in Nelsonville, you could put up a pool, and we don't regulate the fence, and we don't regulate if it's got stagnant water in it, where this does. Exterior walls, rubbish and garbage, interior walls, and pest eliminations. So it also goes in depth with rodents and pests, which I really like. So we got a lot of houses that belong to individuals, and they may have bed bugs or cockroaches, and it's an issue for the neighbors. And really, our code just says that the property owner has to provide a pest eliminator or a resource to eliminate the pests. This goes more into detail. And then we'll go to chapter 5. Plumbing facilities and fixture requirements. Required plumbing systems and fixtures, of course, in houses. We have that currently in our Title 31. Water heating required. So, every house needs to have a water heater. Public water and sewer when available, we have that in our current code. Sanitary draining system, we have that in our current code. And storm drainage, we don't so much have that in our current code. So it looks like whoever wrote the code prior to me kind of used this book, but they pick and choose what they wanted from this and put it in our Nelsonville City Code. Chapter 6 is mechanical and electrical requirements. Heating facilities shall be provided in structures capable of maintaining a room temperature of, 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Safety controls for fuel burning equipment shall be maintained in effective operation. Electronic equipment, wiring, and appliances shall be properly installed and maintained in a safe and approved manner. Duct system shall be maintained free of obstructions and shall be capable of performing the required functions. So I go into a lot of rentals where the duct work's not even hooked up, and we don't really have anything in our current rental code that talks about a whole lot of that in detail. And then we got chapter 7. Chapter 7 covers fire safety requirements, means of egress and existing buildings, and it's regulated by the International Fire Code, IFC, portable fire extinguishers, and working carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. And then chapter 8 is the reference standards. So this is important. This chapter 8 allows the officer or the administration to reference the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association. So a lot of this book is written on those particular agencies. They pulled stuff from the ICC, they pulled stuff from the ASME, they pulled stuff from the ASTM and the UL. So as a performance-oriented code, the code contains numerous references to documents that are used to regulate materials and methods of construction. I believe that's it. Now, I did buy a copy of the 2018. If anyone wants to borrow it and read, they're welcome to it. I'm hoping that our next budget cycle or sometime soon, maybe I can get a couple electronic versions where I can give people the passwords or whatever, and they can go in and read up on the IPMC. So if anybody wants to take a gander at this book, I have it. So I think the IPMC is pretty important to the city. I know that recently Logan has got a fairly new code enforcement office, and they had asked me to go up and talk to them about our city code as far as with different types of property maintenance issues, trash, weeds, abandoned houses. I went up about a year ago. I think it was about this time last year. And I told them what we're doing. And a lot of our code came from Athens. It was adopted from Athens, and I think it was adopted from this manual as well. And it's kind of like a bunch of stuff all mixed together. And I recommended them to adopt the IPMC, and Logan, the city of Logan, did do that. So their code officer is working out of this book. I think the most helpful thing with us adopting the IPMC is a lot of our dilapidated and just ran down rentals that are still being rented that may not necessarily pass an inspection for HUD, maybe. And I think that you know, I just think it's important for the maintenance of our buildings in town.
So Becky, if we adopt the, it sounds like this was renewed maybe every 3 years,
Well-
2015 and then 2018. And if
We-
we just adopt it as a whole, as it updates, ours will automatically update that.
We
correct?
can do that. We can do it two ways. I talked to Gary Hunter. We can adopt the 2018 version. We can adopt the 2015 version, the one that there's not much difference. Other than, this is vetted by attorneys. And if something goes to the Supreme Court, they revise the IPMC every 3 years. That's why they revise it every 3 years. Because some of the stuff maybe in, like our code currently has a lot of stuff that I cannot follow through on and cite people. So these attorneys and the panel of these companies come together and they vote on what they want to take out and what they want to put in. What lawfully can they change? What lawfully can they take out? So it's nice to keep adopting the code as it updates, but some places they just adopt the 2018 or the 2015. So we could do it either way. We could continue to adopt the newest version, or we can adopt the 2018. Now, one thing I do like about this, the 2018, it describes what a single family, it defines what a single family is according to 2020, as far as in relation of what a family is. So I do like that. And I think that would keep us out of a lot of legal heat when we're trying to tell people who they can have in their house as far as occupancy. Really. So.
And so if we adopt this, then would it just replace all of our existing code that we currently have?
Yeah.
Would it just be on another layer onto our existing code?
Well, our existing code is kind of outdated. I don't know if you were at the meeting with planning when we talked about our zoning code and a few of our maintenance property code. It's pretty outdated. I think it was written, 15 years ago? We've never changed what needs to be taken out. This would I would follow this. I think the city would follow what we adopt. And if this doesn't have what our current code has in it, say vacant registration fees, this doesn't have fees in it. So we would just go along with our fees that we've already have established. This doesn't have like court costs and stuff like that. So some of the stuff that we already are using, we would still use along with this.
If I could summarize maybe a little bit differently too. So one of the things we did learn about back when I first got here was we were looking at $25,000 to $30,000 to have our code rewritten. If we take something off the shelf like this and utilize it, other people are doing all that legwork. And then all we have to really focus on as far as council's perspective, aside from fees, is just the Nelsonville specific items that we want to make sure we do here, you know. The Trash Can Gate 2020, you know, we don't forget that from back in April. You know, that's just an off the shelf cookie cutter house or cookie cutter house rule. You know, and our houses in Nelsonville aren't built like that. In fact, we don't even have the geography to support that for a lot of places. So, you know, that's where we can get into the individual things and make things specific to Nelsonville instead of having everything, you know, locked in. This gives us a lot of flexibility with what's going on in the rest of the country.
That's already tested and approved.
I believe this is the first step to providing better housing in our community. I really do.
I agree. You guys okay with sending that to council for first reading?
Sure.
So you mentioned online access. If we adopt this and we put it in our, I'm assuming we'll adopt this probably by resolution. I don't know if we would do it by ordinance, but so we adopt this, would we then be able to put a link on our website that anybody could go and view it?
So we are currently, Planning Commission have brought up a really good point. A lot of individuals have no idea how to manipulate their way through the city webpage to figure out where's the code at. So I've got stuff in chapter 7, I've got stuff in chapter 9, I've got stuff in all these chapters, right? So what our idea was to put the permits, this is a zoning permit. Click on it, you'd have the application, you can fill it out or download it, and then the code would follow it. This would have a chapter all of its own. And yes, we can put a link, we can change the website around to where we can fix it where it's easy to find for the normal person that wants to know. An example, pool. I want to put a pool in. This describes what needs to take place when you put a pool in. Do I need to put fence in? Instead of calling me, asking me, they can click online on that particular reference number. Like it's just like the city code. This is 403.4 spas, you know, pools, and they click on that and then this will come up. So yes, I want to make it very easy for people to understand.
I'm all for making that website more user-friendly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're working on that.
So that would be put on the website if we adopt it.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yes,
I think that'd be important as long as you made a comment that to pay for an online access or something. I just want to make sure that if we do adopt it, that our citizens would be able to access it without.
Oh, absolutely,
paying.
yes. We would never do anything that our citizens wouldn't know how to get to or maneuver around. And I am all for, if I can make things easier online, it makes my job easier. I have less phone calls and less questions.
I'm all for getting more
Is somebody
forms
working on that already as far as making the website more friendly, user-friendly?
Ryan and I are. I've been working with Ryan on it. Sarah Milligan, she's on planning. She came up with 4 different cities. I transferred it over to Scott. He made a choice what he thought was more user-friendly. He chose a city, and we're gonna kind of capture what that city's doing on our city webpage. And I'm gonna, once we get the fees established, because I know that we're working on fee changes right now. Once we get the fees established and we get this established, because we don't want to work on something and then change something in the middle. So we need to figure out, are we going to adopt this? We need to figure out, are we going to change the fees? And we want to update the applications a little bit for permitting as well. They're kind of old, they're kind of outdated. We want to update that stuff. We want to get it on iWorks. In the future, we'd like to be able to have an individual go online, click on the application, submit it, it goes to us. Before it goes to us, they have to pay the fee online. So all those things are in the process, but we got to do one step at a time. And this is one of the big steps. And then planning's working on the fees to give you guys an idea of what they think needs to happen with all of our permitting fees and stuff.
Yeah, that was gonna be one of my questions, is if those forms would be able to be submitted online also, then so we're working on that.
We could save time, we could save paper, we could save ink, we could save postage, we could save people driving here.
Yep.
We could save manpower. You have no, I mean, it's a win-win for everybody all around if they can buy their permits online.
Very convenient, if they pay for it right online too.
We get a lot of contractors from West Virginia, and they're starting work. It takes a good couple weeks to get that permit to me and me get it back to them. So that would cut all that out. And we would get paid immediately. Before the application, once you submit it, you won't be able to do the final step of submitting until they pay the permit. The thing that they're working out and planning is, do we want to put that credit card fee into our permits and do like a yearly increase, like do a 2% yearly? So they're looking at scheduling, like build a schedule for the next 10 years, and the permits increase by so much. Do we want an increase of 2%, 1%? Do we want to add the credit card fees in and it be a hidden fee? Or do we want to show the person, so if someone still walks in to get a permit and pays, do we want them to pay the credit card fee? No, probably not, because they're not using it. So we're just trying to figure out all the kinks before they present it to you guys.
Okay, great.
I'm always in favor of the, letting them know about the fee for a credit card. And then just give them the option, because they, you can mail a check, or you can.
I'm looking at a lot of this stuff. It's what I've been doing is reviewing, and it's a lot of it's common sense. I
This,
mean, it's
the
really,
IPNC, oh yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I don't think this would put
it's not
anyone,
rocket science.
this
It won't
manual,
eliminate the need to mow your grass. It won't eliminate the
No.
need for you to pick up your trash. I mean, and honestly, that's the bread and butter of Becky's job now. you
Yeah.
know?
it's very minimal standards. It's not gonna put all the citizens in hardship, but it is gonna put those people that have buildings that aren't necessarily the kind of buildings that we want to stand in our city. It's gonna get them working a little bit harder towards, making their houses safer, and healthier for their, tenants and for themselves as well.
Do you have more questions?
You good?
I'm good.
Citizen comment. So Vicky McDonald says, times are hard right now. If I may, I think it needs to be considered people are struggling right now. Please keep in mind how much deeper you're reaching in their pockets. I think it is very unfair to compare us to communities that have 3 times more residents and many more businesses. Charging more and more is only going to cause more people to leave here.
So I don't think the IPMC is gonna charge it's not gonna cost the citizens anything. And our permits
Costs nothing to clean up.
the same price for several years. So I think if we want a town to prosper, I think we need to get on board with being more modern and more advanced. And,
True.
so I don't think the IPMC adopting that's not gonna cost the citizens any money.
Can't afford not to adopt it. Too many people living in squalor.
And I'd like to mention that, I just want to thank all the citizens around 770 and 784 Poplar. The police department and the code office and the utilities department went out and secured those two buildings. And we had a tremendous amount of support from the community there. We got eyes watching, they're keeping an eye out, and of course, we respond to their complaints as soon as they take place. So I just wanted to thank all the folks that live around 770 and 784 Poplar. And then that's all I have.
Well, we're gonna talk about your joining the union as well.
Oh, okay.
So, Becky's desire to join the union, she had two choices, one either the utility or the city workers union or the police department union. Believe that was, you know, tell more about that, or Scott Frank, maybe?
So it's my understanding that right now we're in the infancy stages of this discussion. So the union would have to accept her, which I know the utilities union has no issues with that. I don't know about police department union yet, and then council would have to authorize that. So there's no issues from my perspective. I think it's just a better fit under the police department union, just because their jobs are so closely related.
So, I'm sure we'd like to get this resolved as soon as possible, so maybe a January 1 day of making the big move. So that's why I'm bringing up that discussion now, so that you guys have time to talk to the police union.
And that makes sense with our negotiations right now, because we'll be able to get it in the next contract, well, no matter which union it is, because all three of them are up there, and then we'll be able to put that provision in place. The idea is just to see if there's any, make sure we got council support, and before pushing too much forward, and if that's the case, then move out and come up to a resolution.
Okay, and then everything that she does now, I think would go with her, because she already does all the permitting.
We're just talking about the union, correct?
Well, yeah, so, but when she makes that move, everything that she does now, basically, code, permitting, working with the BZA and all that good stuff, probably go with her as well.
Yeah, I wasn't
Why
thinking
wouldn't
anything.
it, wouldn't her job isn't changing if you join?
No,
the
no,
union?
well, she would no longer be his administrator, but, so there is a little bit of difference there.
If you guys wanted to reorganize and structure, you could, of course, you can do that. My thought process was she would just be within their union, still doing what she does where she's at. Just like the utility workers union has water plant guys, sewer plant guys, and then the water clerks in here for the auditor's office. So, they're not, just because they're in one union doesn't mean they're organizationally task organized underneath that department. Now, if you want to do that, certainly you can do that.
We should be on her pitch at that point, if she was in the police union.
I don't think the
Correct.
union correlates to the task organization. We can task organize differently. Then the union doesn't decide how we're task organized.
She's separate. I would say she, regardless of her union, she'd still be her own department.
Yeah.
True.
So
She
I
just
don't-
follows under union guidelines.
As far as which union she's part of. I don't think she answers anybody differently, and I don't think she necessarily has to change any roles that she's currently taking, unless the union states otherwise, but
Well, so that was the purpose of starting that discussion. Is there anything else, Becky? So we're good with moving the IPMC forward to council for first reading, or?
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, good.
I'll have to see how long it's gonna take Gary Hunter to write this. I'm not sure. He's wanting a electronic copy, and I haven't got that yet, so I'll have to order electronic copy.
How much is an electronic copy?
paper copy was cheaper. Well, there's 1 and 3 year premium access. Doesn't have a price. I don't know how much it is. I'll have to find out. I'm sure it's online, the cost. I wouldn't say it's any more than $65. I would think $75.
We'll move on to Mr. Barber. Chief Barber.
To recap really quick on the International Property Maintenance Code, I worked with previous code enforcement. We tried to get the International Property Maintenance Code passed as local code for the city. It was met with some resistance at that time. The International Property Maintenance Code, to recap on what Scott and Becky have said, is it's written by the International Code Council. International Code Council writes the building code, the fire code, all that. So what they do is they pull pieces that are very, very minimum standards out of these different codes, including the fire code. And this is just a basic minimum standard. It's basic living requirements, which has already been vetted by all of their attorneys. So the city would definitely keep themselves out of trouble by adopting this. And even the State Fire Marshal's Office actually uses the International Property Maintenance Code at times as well. So just wanted to throw that out there.
So the items you got on your list there, one is if we're expanding our services or, wanting to expand our services or even our footprint, of course, our fire department needs to grow with it. I think eventually to run a full EMS, we're talking about 6 full-time employees, but with at least a bed and a chairlifts and whatnot at minimum, and even to help staff what you got now, I think you got to be looking to put on a 4 firefighter full-time for January 1.
Yeah, so we talked a lot over the past couple of years, made a lot of changes, restructured the department. Most of our members right now are part-time firefighters. As everybody knows, you don't get to buy in with part-time, so we're actually bouncing most of our part-timers from firehouse and EMS station to EMS station. Most of my firefighters that are part-time work on an average 4 different jobs. So what happens is they're great employees and they're very dedicated to the job here as well. But as soon as a full-time job comes open, they're gone. And we knew when we first started this, there wasn't going to be buying with part-time. We wholeheartedly all agreed to that. We have worked with a very minimum set of staff for years. We're still minimum staff now. What we'd like to do is start transitioning into more paid members to make it easier to do more things in the future, to expand footprint, to expand services. Just taking on EMS, we have an aging community, and just taking on EMS has added to the mercy calls for the city. Now, the way we've restructured, we pretty much, for the most part, have tried to eliminate overtime. I think maybe we've used $1,000 in the past 3 years in overtime. But what we have is, the way we've structured it, we're using a lot of off-duty time. It's still being paid out. So every time we have a call, one of our members might be driving the squad for Athens County EMS because we're working an involved EMS call. Or we get stuck on an EMS call, we're working that, we can't abandon the patient. So we're trying to think about the future, think about better ways to run the department now. We have calls that are all calls. So every time we have a call, most of the calls, the way we tailor, the way we run the department now, we can handle all those calls with our on-duty staff. We still have calls that require an on-call. So what happens then is more members come in that are off duty that we're paying. Now, even though we've structured everything and tailored to the most part where we're not paying overtime, as far as what people think of overtime numbers, we're still paying those members to do this. If we can add another full-time member it helps all that. It helps eliminate the off-duty calls for the all-calls. It helps eliminate the need to call somebody out when we're working an EMS call, when we're working a code in town, which we do a lot of those. There's been a lot of talk with council and other city employees and people in the community about wanting to see the department expand more on EMS that we provide now. All of these things are good ideas, but we need to build our department as well. This is one of those steps that, let's say it took us a couple of years to get the transport for EMS. This is still a benefit that's gonna help run the department more efficiently. And not only that, anytime we have a call and the engine shows up, the more people we have on that engine, the more positively affects the ISO rate for the city. And we were very, very close to the next step in ISO as well, which directly affects people's insurance rates in the community that we protect.
Well, I do agree with that. As far as, I don't know how you do it with just 3 full-time firefighters and running 24, 48 shifts. It just, you guys gotta get more out. Because you're putting a part-timer with a full-timer.
Correct.
And running all those shifts. So I think it just makes sense to expand your department by at least 1, and then eventually up to 6 once you get the squad up and running.
There's a lot of different ideas that we've been looking at for the future. Obviously, a lot of these ideas might be limited because of funding. But these are all places to start. And the first place we can just start is having the personnel to do it.
Any other comments on that or questions?
If this gets pushed further on, we're wanting to do this in conjunction with the civil service exam, because we do have open positions for part-time as well. I think we have 3 open positions. And I think the police department's on the deadline too for civil service as well. So it's kind of like the right time to ask, but during the pandemic, also not the right time to ask. But eventually this will have to happen either way.
How do you guys feel about 4 firefighters as far as benefiting your department?
I think it'll benefit greatly. And then it's not just 1 firefighter we want to go. Down the road, we want to at least add 2 more after that to get
Well, yeah,
6.
because ideally you'll want 2 full-times on with 2 part-time, so to run the squad and the engine at the same time.
That's a goal down the road. But right now, Athens County is still the primary EMS provider.
Right, so that's your 5-year plan.
And then
We need to start
our
expanding.
fire calls are still going up as well, so that's another issue that we've had to attack. And 2 guys on the truck, statewide and nationwide, is pretty tough to maintain with the call volume, especially one that keeps going up and up every year. We just don't meet the standards that are out there and the guidelines that are recommended. So
Well,
it's never a good time to ask, but we always want to be preemptive in it anyway.
Chief, what's a full-time officer currently, making in your department?
Around 40.
That's including or not including the benefits?
That would not include the benefits.
Yeah, I'd say it's 40 after everything's taken out. Is the benefit package about 20?
We look at the,
25?
Well, the cost of insurance for a family plan is, I think, about $27,000.
Well, didn't they pass the ordinance where new full-time employees are only offered to individuals? Are there?
We discussed it.
Okay.
We're not gonna-
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Would be fair to other people.
so yeah, right around 40. It's probably very close. We've had a couple step increases that we weren't anticipating when we first set up this contract. For those that remember, we set the contract up and locked it in for 3 years and get paid to help the city out financially. So we weren't expecting those pay increases. So we can rework the numbers, but it's very close to that. I think it started out at 37.8 before this step.
I'm 40, and
Yeah, so he stepped out right now, even at 40. So it's not a lot, but we know that it adds up with the benefit package as well.
Well, hopefully with our expanding our footprint, that'll also add.
Yeah, I know these are all goals. I'm not gonna sit here and tell everybody, hey, by this date, we're gonna be able to do this, by this date, we're gonna do that, because that would be unfair to say that. But these are all goals that,
Why can't you?
well, I mean, as far as, say, by this date, we're gonna be able to provide this, or, you know what I'm saying? These are all things that we want to work towards, and we are working towards now, even with education, with the rest of the crew. But, I mean, we have 3 open positions right now with part-time. And even with the staffing ordinance that allows for that many part-timers, they all have different jobs. And they are just part-time members, so, you know, they're bouncing from station to station. As soon as something full-time comes up, this is gonna take the short end of the stick every time, because it's a part-time job. So the more volume we can get with our department, the easier it's gonna be to grow, it's easier it will be to retain good employees that we have. We've lost some very good employees because we don't have any positions for them.
With Bob Drake.
No, I don't have any problem with it. It just has to go through finance, make
Yeah.
sure the money's there. You know, we can always hope and dream and wish and want, but as long as the,
End of the
Dale's
day, we
got
gotta-
something in
yeah,
it.
so we gotta just make sure it's added into the.
Chief, is this, one position you want to add, is that going to be, that will be a firefighter then and not an EMS position then?
We're doing both right now.
Okay.
So we're cross-training. The intention, the goal for the future is for all of our firefighters to be certified as firefighters and EMS certified as well, which is, almost all of us are now. So the goal is just to stagger back and forth and run the squad on shift. That's the intention when we get to that point.
I'm good with sending it to finance for a budget.
Are we going to be, speaking of budget, Scott, are we going to be able to talk about that in the next finance meeting, next year's budget yet?
So we got it up, it's all out to the department heads now. I just need to set up individual meetings with them so we can shuffle it around and, I'll set it up this week.
sounds good. Anything else? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, so we had, we were waiting on a grant to come in, for Mark's pagers. The fire department made the transition from the high band system, radio system to the, Mark's radio system a few years back. One reason doing that is because this high band channel and dispatch channel is shared by all the fire departments in the county. And every couple of years, what happens is the system's called, it succumbs to what's called narrow banding. So each year they'll go through, each couple of years they'll go through and they'll just keep tweaking their system until there's less and less space, less and less bandwidth on the system. So you've got a pipe that was this big and now it's this big. And everybody's still sharing the same radio frequency. So the Mark's radio grant was really popular through the fire marshal's office. They were really, send all this information to the counties, trying to get the counties to go together for community-based grants to get this broadcasting system that's supposed to be so much better than the high band system. We tried to push it with some other people in the county to try to get the county to go together for a community-based grant. We get to the end of this time frame to do it, and we had a couple departments that bowed out and said, oh, we're not gonna pay for this because what comes with the Mark's radio system, which is the statewide radio system, is what's called a user fee, okay? So according to the state of Ohio, the user fee actually is set at $20 per device a month. The state in our legislation has been able to every year cut that fee down in half to $10. So you pay a fee to use the system. But the system works very well across the state. I can even talk to the guys at the marshal's office from my office where when I'm doing the inspection, talk back and forth. That's how this radio system works. So what happened was, over the years, even under chiefs before me, we started to have these pagers die on the high band system. And the pagers weren't cheap. We knew we were going to the Mark system, so we didn't buy any more high band pagers. We still have this radio system in place, but it's used as a backup in case something happens with our Mark system. So fast forward to now, this year, I write a lot of grants for the fire department, and when I write grants, I try to write grants for large items that are going to more greatly impact the city as far as monetary, as far as price goes. So I write in for stuff like the SCBA's, $140,000 grants versus like a $12,000 grant for radios. Well, this past year, I wrote a communications grant for Mark's pagers and communication devices for the fire apparatus. We had some things happen, and that grant was not awarded. So since that grant wasn't awarded, that brought up the conversation of, okay, now we need to find the money to pay for these Mark's pagers because I was counting on them coming in for the grant. So basically, my crew, my firefighters are being dispatched through a cell phone app right now that's not supposed to be used for dispatching. It's not supposed to replace voice dispatching. But I've been using it that way to buy time, hoping we get this grant. But the grant didn't come through, which brings up the conversation of we need to find the money to buy the Mark's pagers now. I have no pagers for my firefighters. You will not find a fire department anywhere around here that doesn't get dispatched through voice over a paging system. A perfect example was, think of it like a phone chat system. So when somebody calls 911, and we've had this happen a lot, it'll come out, perfect example was Franklin Street. That's a dryer fire, okay? So they don't know how to, they have no way to code this as a dryer fire because it's not coded as a structure fire. So it comes in as other on this app. So if we're lucky, we get a beep on our phone, and it's completely dependent on cell signal too, which is another problem. And it just says other for that address. So most of my firefighters see other at 5:30 in the morning, and okay, well, I'm not, that's not a fire. Or
When you say firefighters, you're talking about the ones that are not on duty.
Correct. Yes, because we only have two firefighters on duty. So what happens is we're trying to depend on a cell phone app that was only designed to be used as an added tool in the toolbox for mapping. I can put hydrant locations in. We track our active COVID cases in town. It's a private system that only my firefighters can see when I send a message out, so it's not open to the county. Now, I can also communicate with other members in the county, but for our alerts, it's private. So we use it as just an added tool for mapping and to add map locations and map information in on addresses. So basically, we have no pagers at all for the fire department. Obviously, you don't give all your firefighters a radio to dispatch or to broadcast on. That would be foolish. For one reason, they're much more expensive than a pager, and there's no reason for all of them to have a device to broadcast on anyways, because then that charges a user fee that I have to pay as well. So we're looking at, with programming fees included, $12,300 to buy Mark's pagers. And if you are interested, just a couple stats I tried to throw together really quick. Since we last talked about this, we've had 24 active 911 alerts sent from Athens County. Out of those 24 active 911 alerts, 3 of those active alerts had no data or had incorrect data. The problem with not dispatching, with not listening to your call through a radio or a pager, is if the dispatcher sends out an active, we're at the mercy of exactly what they sent in that first active, okay? So the active itself doesn't change. So if I'm off duty and I'm at the house and these guys get tuned out for a fire and it comes in as other, the only thing I know is we have a call. That's all we know. So if somebody calls back in and said, be advised, I have people trapped in this house, they can hear, anybody that has a pager radio, they're hearing all the traffic in real time. I don't know what's going on, or none of my off-duty members do until they show up on scene and somebody tells them. So it's worked to try to save us money, hoping we get this grant, but we didn't get it. I'm at the point now where this is what we have to have. It's not a want, it's definitely a need.
But we've looked at these before though, right? And we've kind of prioritized other things over these the last several years.
No, I could have wrote a grant for pagers when I wrote the grant for the SCBA's. But when I wrote the grant for the SCBA's, that was a $140,000 price tag that I knew we only had a few years left on our tank, on our bottles. So if I wouldn't have written that grant, we would have had to come up with the money to replace all those bottles, and get all the air packs, taken care of. So I've kind of, for lack of better terms, I guess I've had to triage the needs. And what's gonna better help the city of Nelsonville? Was it gonna be try to rent a grant for 12,000 or try to rent a grant for 150,000, which is what I've been doing the past few years. So the grant rank's been it's been great. Success rate's very high, but we just didn't get it. And since we didn't get it, now I gotta go back to plan B, which was asking for the money. Now, plan B initially was, if we didn't get the grant, we would have just used capital improvement money. But our capital improvement money has since been taken away from the fire department, so now I have to come ask for this money.
And it was budgeted in the capital improvement money?
No, the thing about the capital improvement is, as long as it has a useful lifespan of 5 years or more, I can, as the department head, make the decision on what I feel is necessary to purchase out of the capital improvement. So what I do with capital improvement money is I use it the same as a line item in my budget and make the purchases. Of course, those purchases are still signed off by the city manager as well. And
How much did you have in the capital improvements before it got taken away?
45,000. Because the way Gary Dickerson had it set up, every year they would add 15,000 to it. Now, if you look historically, I don't operate my department, and I know a lot of people don't now. But before, a lot of department heads would operate the department with the idea of, well, if I don't use my line item, I won't get that much money next year. So historically, if you look, I don't drain my line items out, and I didn't do that with capital improvement either. But we did use it for purchases that we knew were larger purchases that the city didn't have the extra money to make this purchase, through. So as long as it met the 5-year requirement, we were good. It just didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, there wouldn't have been enough money in there for the truck and the pagers though, as of today. We
Sure.
would have had to leave money in there still for the truck.
The truck payment is
That-
$14,500.
That came out of the capital improvements too, though, in annual.
Yes. There was enough money in that line item to take care of the pagers, the truck payment, and then extra. And then
You're
still-
assuming that the 15,000 was added each year to that line item though.
I was going by the 45,000 number. Even if you go by the 30,000 number, the truck payment's 14,500, I think. That still would have only taken half of even the 30,000. So the way I had it figured out, every year we would buy a little bit of gear, a little bit of the protective equipment that we had to buy for the crew members, because everything has a lifespan as well as far as the protective gear goes. So we had everything pretty much set to where, okay, we buy this year, this next year, buy more of this next year. We just don't have that ability to do that now. So it's definitely been a little crippling as far as not being able to buy the things that we were buying out of capital improvement.
So the dispatch now, has the dispatch changed, since Hawking has taken over now?
So they dispatch the police department, and we're still on the county system for fire departments.
So it's still county dispatch.
Same dispatch.
The issues with the phone app, the dispatching themselves down at 911 is just, we're at the mercy of whatever's typed into the phone app. And occasionally there's an update if something does change en route to a scene, but a lot of times is, here's your general incident, it could be anything, and then here's an address for it. And that's basically all we get. But if you guys are on duty or they have a radio at home, off duty, they're able to hear in real time what's going on. So we've gotten dispatched out before for an EMS call that was nothing and then turned into something serious by the time they even got there. That wasn't correlated in the phone app at all.
Right.
And that's the issue that we're having with is if you get one thing and it turns out to be more serious, it's not getting relayed. And we only have a limited amount of radios for communication department-wide. The pagers would supplement that. And we can do voice alerting and they can hear everything that's going on.
The active 911 app was not something that was set up initially by the Athens County dispatchers. in 2013, Dan Pfeiffer and a local chief looked at the app and said, hey, we can use this to add, some of these firefighters will buy into this because they can add stuff to their maps. They can add relevant information to an address. That's what the software is. It's not a dispatching application at all. It's a mapping application where we can add stuff to a specific address in our coverage areas. Like we use it for, remember it's locked down, so we use it for some door code information. We track active COVID-19 cases with it. Stuff that's relevant to our crew when they show up on a scene, they can pull this app up and just get a couple, get some added information on that address.
So after they dispatch you guys through the radio system, then they go back and type that into the phone app?
It's a hit or miss. Sometimes we get it before we're alerted, during an area alert, or a few minutes after.
Or 10 minutes into a call.
Yeah, we've gotten them late into a call.
If you do something as simple as put your phone on vibrate, you've missed a call. It's over.
And we shouldn't depend on cell phones in the first place for this.
I have very spotty signal in my house. I miss runs because no active.
We have a combination department, so, we have quite a few members that, it would not make any sense to buy more Mark's radios that you can talk on, because then it's a higher expense. We have to pay for user fees. There is no user fee with Mark's pagers, so there's no recurring cost.
And how many pages are we getting for that?
That's 17 pagers. And that would allow me to make sure that I have enough pagers for all my members that don't have a portable radio. It allowed me to have a few, not very many, a few for more members coming on.
What happens if we dump one of those in the river? Like I think the police department might have.
We have to replace it.
I've been on previous departments with that damaged radio equipment, and they can do as an extra claim on all. Your deductibles and everything else.
Yeah, it's not gonna meet our deductible.
We're only talking $670 a piece, so they're not, when you think about the price of a radio, they're definitely a lot cheaper. It's a lot easier to buy one than to buy 17. But this would be a really good start, and even if I needed more in the future, it'd be easier to just buy 2 or 3 out of my budget. That's definitely a more attainable number than I'm trying to buy 17 at one pop.
What's the number on that, 6 what?
670. Well, I'll tell you, hold on, I'll just tell you exactly what it is for everything. It's $12,367 for the pagers. Oh, sorry, hold on. Might be cheaper. It's $12,291.51 to be exact. Because each pager has to be programmed through our system. And there's a programming fee of $35 per pager to do that.
How long did you say we've been using that app now?
Too long.
Came out in what, 2013?
Well, probably. We've been using the app, besides, on top of dispatching. But since we transitioned from the high band system to the Mark system, and then the pages that we did have that were working in the high band system, they have since failed, I think. There are literally four functioning pagers now that are on the high band system for the fire department. And that doesn't do us any good when we operate off the Mark system now.
The county one that does our alert system in the nighttime.
That's true. We have, I know Scott's seen the bunk room and how it's set up. So basically, in the bunk room where the firefighters sleep, there's a pager that sets in an amplified base. We get tuned off of the way it's set up, very similar to the way Athens City is set up. We get tuned off of both the high band and the Mark system because of the situation we have with no pagers. And since we don't have the Mark's pager, it hits that high band pager and it alerts the station very loudly. So it's like basically like an amplified bell that wakes the crew up in the middle of the night to respond to it.
Lights come on?
Lights do come on.
Seems on Mr. Dumpy left. What do you want to do?
Well, it's gotta go to finance, we have to see if we can, we got 12 variants on
Just move to finance? Okay. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. That's it.
Scott, got anything?
John Meeks says, can you please check into longevity money owed to former and current employees of the police department from 2019 that was never paid?
Finance committee.
That's more, well, that's from convict, who's no longer with us. And he emailed that exact question yesterday to Taylor, and I know Taylor's already working on it. So, he should be hearing something soon. And it's only for the last 2 months, as I understand, so we're not talking a significant amount of money. Money owed is money owed, I fully understand that.
the last 2 months of last year, you're saying?
Yes. That's it.
Did you have anything besides the comment then? Or-
No, sir, I'm good to go.
Did you have anything?
I'm good.
He
I
doesn't-
don't know.
Tony doesn't have anything either.
Yeah, Tony, you got anything?
Quiet as he's been all night.
No, I know it. All right, we'll just call this meeting to, oh, I'm sorry, hold on that. Any other comments? Back there? All right, we'll call this meeting adjourned at 14 after 8.